So very pleased to introduce our featured presenter for today, Nuno Da Silva. Nuno Da Silva is midwifing the emergence of regenerative cultures in Europe. He is co-founder of Lúcida, a change management organization guided by a living systems worldview. A recovered economist, Nuno started training youth educators around the world in experiential collaborative learning methodologies. He is committed to resourcing people and entities with curiosity and care, supporting their development and contribution to a just transition that harmonizes human activities with nature. So thank you very much for being with us, Nuno, and for talking with us about this important subject. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Don. Hello, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm talking from the south of Portugal. I'm touching the ground here in Faro, the capital of Algarve. It is sunny day, although a bit chill. Yeah, I just want to say, well, let me share the screen to put here the presentation, and I'm going to try to speak as little as I can and really offer us an opportunity to experience some small exercises, because more than to talk about living systems, what I really want to invite us in is to experiment with some exercises to see if they generate a different way of thinking about things, particularly a bit about our work with the transition, and see if it generates some insights on different ways to think about things and then to act upon them. So, you know, the purpose is really to, through a living systems perspective, reflect on our thinking and about how transition initiatives engage with locally with change processes. I hope to do it in a way that is really engaging and generates discernment and enthusiasm in us, so that the transition movement can continue to develop and evolve its capacity and capabilities to nourish well-being, health in our social ecological systems that we live in. And we'll start with a wake up, then we're going to do 3 exercises and kind of reflect in the end about the whole experience and close the session. She's really just touching the surface, but I hope it's going to awaken you some more curiosity and interest about this way of working and practicing change. So an invitation I want to bring to everybody is really to accept nothing of what I'm going to share with you without testing it in your own experience. So really, and the invitation is really to go and experiment, and then see how that works for you and for the initiatives you are involved in. And the same for do not reject anything without testing it first, right? So don't act like automatically or follow blindly what I'm saying. Just really work with it, experiment it, even if it doesn't sound like something that makes sense to you, and see how that works in your own practice. So just a bit of word of the context, because, you know, I think you all know this, but it's like we're living in a very unique moment in human history. And it offers a huge challenge for us, because we don't have a memory, a collective memory as humans, particularly those of us in the Western world, of the enormosity of disruptions and breakdowns that we're going to go through in our lifespans. So one of the things that is for me a curiosity is like, what are the capabilities that we really need to be working on to be able to navigate this huge transition? And what are those that really help us to harmonize human activities with nature? And then the second question I'm holding is discovering or trying to identify what are those capabilities, like how to develop them, like right, how to work on those muscles that we need to work to be able to do this change work that we're trying to do. By the way, I'm seeing Anai in the waiting room. Yeah. So So let's start by doing, I'm going to move this. So what we're going to work today is trying to do some small shifts in thinking that in general, we can say moving from looking at the world and looking at life as a machine and working with parts and working with issues and fragments towards working with whole systems, with life as a whole. And it involves a few changes in the way we think and do things. So let's experiment with that and start with just a wake-up exercise to bring us all in the session, leave our concerns, our other things behind, and just really be present to these 2 hours we're going to be together. So I want to invite you to think about, as trainers and people who maybe are not trainers, maybe have a different roles in the transition movement, what is it that you care about and that you really value as you go through these major shifts? And try to go beneath the surface. You are going really deep to the source of what is it that is really, that you're really caring for, that sources your energy as you do the work you do every day. And then think also about how this care is shaping your approach in these different roles that you have within the transition movement, either as any part of an transition initiative, as a trainer, or any other role you might have. And Don is preparing to send us out in breakouts, in trios. We'll have a very short time, so just share briefly, okay? You'll have 6 minutes for the wake up. So it's really going to be an intense session. So fasten your seatbelts, welcome, and I hope you enjoy. And good luck with enjoy the breakouts. See you in a moment.
Great. So we have a few people in a trio, but most people in pairs.
No worries.
So I'll open the rooms now, and you just click on join room.
Welcome back, everybody. We're not going to have space to share among all of us, but I want to get a sense, would be great to have a sense of the whole, what's coming out of the whole of us. So I'm going to share the screen and invite you to get your mobile phones or just use it on your own computer. And you can either use the QR codes or you can write down, wait, I have something here that I need to move. Otherwise, this is going to be in front of us. Okay. So either use the QR code or you can write www.menti.com and then put on the top of the window that code, and it will open up a question about what you care for. And like coming from the conversation, just choose the 3 most important things you care about. And we get a sense of what's coming out of the whole group. Okay, and then let's see what's coming out. So you can see like the bigger the words, the more commonality they have among us. And you see right on the middle, one that showed up for more than one person was integrity. So this sense of caring for integrity of whole living systems, right? I can imagine. And then you see around evolution, life, connection, social justice, a sense of community, fellow travelers, biodiversity, showing up as the best self, value flowing, social justice, self-care. So yeah, we were talking, and it's interesting. I don't know what came out of the of each group, but Lisa, Don, and I were talking about, and one of the things that came out was this sense of that we hold the image that humans can have a different role in life and can be better at harmonizing our own activities with those of nature as being part of nature. And that also, in a way, is about caring for the ongoing process of life reinventing itself, which means also caring for the next generations and how they are going to be enabled or prepared to deal with the challenges they have. So this is really important because we start with what's common among us, right? We all care for something, and that's what sources our energy to wake up every day and go do the work in the world we do. And often we forget about that in our stretch for issues, to defend justice and different things that each person has his own ideas, but we all have commonalities in what we care for and what we cherish. And that's a good starting point to generate a nice field among us to be working together, because we are looking at, actually we care for the same things, right? All right, so let me stop sharing this, and we're going to move forward with more exercises. But before that, so I want to do a game, okay? And it's related with a thing that's for me a starting point, that actually change needs to start with the way we think about things and not about what we do in the world. You know, the fundamental changes happens in the way we think. So I just want to do a small exercise with you and see if that generates some insights on what we need to be caring for. And Donnie is going to send us in breakouts in pairs to do this exercise. And it's very simple. Be aware of the instructions I give you, okay? And work with them. So the game is played with two players. One player will use circles. The other player will use crosses. Okay. So when you go in the planner, in the breakouts, you will have, imagine you'll have a shared sheet of paper. So you'll have to work out with the fact that you are in different places in the world. But you just imagine that you are working on the same sheet of paper, not on two different ones, right? And on the sheet of paper, please draw two hashtags, like you see there on the corner on the lower right side of the screen. And how you play the game, you will work with each player, one with circles, the other with crosses, and you play, and the winner is the one who makes more points. You'll have 5 minutes to play, and you make 1 point every time you make a sequence of 3 axes or 3 circles in any direction, either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. Okay? And that's the game. Just it. 1 sheet of paper, 2 players, 1 with circles, 1 with crosses, 2 hashtags. You gain 1 point every time you make a sequence of 3, either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. Okay, is that clear? So then, Don, send us in breakouts, 5 minutes, see you back in 5 minutes. Good luck. Quickly on some results. So I'm curious, like, who made like, you know, 0, 1, or 2 points? Yeah, so there's a few people with 0. I can't see everybody with the screen limitations I'm having.
We can write in the chat.
Yeah, just maybe you can help me, Don, saying like how many people made 0, how many made 1, just to get a sense of the group. Who made 0?
So it looks like Rakesh and Philip tied 0-0.
All right, 1 point.
And I saying 1 point. The two NIs.
Okay, and 2 points. Anyone made 2?
Myself and Lisa.
You and Lisa. Okay, so let's
both made 2
perhaps
points.
from those who made 0-1, anyone would just like to very briefly tell how did you went about it? What was your thinking while you were doing the game? Anyone?
Just unmute yourself and jump in.
Yeah.
I can share, Nuno. Happy to see you, querido.
Very
And we were together with Anaí, my mirror in the middle of America there. And we find ourselves at the beginning, like playing in the old way as we did as little girls, blocking the other not to win. And we discovered no one won. And in the second, we agree that we were going to support each other. So both won.
So you managed to make each one how many points?
1
1 each. All right. Thank you.
each.
Rakesh, Philip, do you wanna one of you just briefly share like what was your thinking, because you've scored like 0 each, right?
Yeah, basically we're both IT people, so we're both very, 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 very logical. And so after a couple of games, we realized that neither of us are gonna intentionally, unless we intentionally lose, neither of us can beat each other. So instead,
Yeah.
we just had a nice conversation.
All right. Don, Lisa, how was it for you? You guys made 3 points each. What was your thinking?
I've done stuff like this before, so I realized that there's no prohibition against collaborating with each other to get more points. So we started collaborating from the start.
All right, so you made 3 points. I want to show you some other possible results that could have been generated. So one could be like this. You know, you like, okay, let's each one get a hashtag and we'll fill it to each one with our own symbols, and you would get like, I think, a total of 16 points each. Well, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 each, 16 points in total, the two. But you could also do this.
Huh.
And you could also actually do this. Because I never told like you have to limit yourself to the hashtags. I just told you have a sheet of paper and 2 hashtags, but nothing else. So I want to just briefly stop here and kind of ask us to just very briefly reflect together on what is this exercise pointing towards? What is it that is kind of, what insights is it generating in terms of how we think about things and how we work with our own thinking?
Do you want folks to raise their hand or just jump in?
Just jump in, open the mic, and then bring your voice. I think we are few, we can sense into the whole as a group and work that out together. So
Can I say something?
that, I think there was Rakesh already, and then and then I think it was you, Tracy, right? So let's hear Rakesh and then Tracy.
Yeah, so Philip and I made assumptions about the rules that we knew for this game. So that was the first thing. But then, if we'd actually heard the extent and broke down your rules, then we could have realized, how we could have collaborated rather than just competing. And so I think the instinct was to follow the rules and compete.
Yeah. So there's something I want to just point out that you were kind of pointing towards, Rakesh, which is that you had some assumptions, and I would say on top of it that we didn't question existing assumptions, right? So we just followed the habitual kind of familiar way we work with this because we felt this. I know this game. Yeah, Tracy, please.
Yeah, I made a guess at that at the beginning, actually. I imagined you tactile the way we did in school. But then I think what was interesting was, you know, you can't make that decision yourself, because I was together in a pair with Mike. And so basically what we realized is we both understood the instructions differently. So neither of us could really get the other person to see it from their point of view, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, thank you that very much, Tracy. That's also pointing out to something extremely important, which is that it's not enough that we change our own thinking about things. We actually have to help each other to really think differently, to stretch our thinking, which is something I think you are pointing out. Otherwise, it's not possible to make the changes we need to make, right? So this is great. I don't know if there's anyone else who would like to add some other insight. I'm going to move forward. There's plenty we could talk about this, but I hope you're also taking some notes for yourself, because this is just kind of touching on the surface, but just to make some points important. Anaí, please.
Yeah, I would like to add something that is very alive in me these days. That is that if we are not aware inside of the automatic patterns that we repeat of the old, it's super difficult to transform. And the same in the teams. So my learning is how to be able to be honest with myself and the others. So we help each other to see the blind spots. And because of not wanting to hurt the other, not being honest. So I see the transformation that we really need to say difficult stuff and to receive, to transform. And I see ourselves, because we want not to be nice, that we get stuck sometimes in months of not communicating. So I appreciate this space, and I would really love that the ones that work together can be honest, even though it hurts, but with love, not as criticism. So thank you, Nuno.
Thank you. So let's continue, and I'm going to talk a bit about what you are pointing towards, Anaí. So I think one of the things we see really frequently in the way people think about change is that actually we are just changing actions. We're not really working with further upstream. So we basically, you can see that in the quest for people for the next big methodology or method or technique, which is in the sphere of actions of the material world. And we hope through changing our actions that we can generate different results, impacts, and in the end, affect the systems in different ways. But actually, I think this actually, we need to go upstream, because what this exercise shows us in a way is that most of the time we are in that automatic mode that Anaí pointed towards. We are actually not really thinking anew about each situation. We are just thoughting. We're just like repeating our patterns of thinking and not really being aware of what am I missing by thinking this way? How am I approaching this situation? And is the way I'm approaching it generating the results I want to generate? And if not, do I change the approach? Do I change the thinking? And then to see if I can generate a different result. And you can see that very clearly with, for instance, sustainability, because what happened in the 90s was suddenly people started to introduce the topic of sustainability, but we were still going downstream and thoughting sustainability with the same kind of thinking we had before. So what this is pointing out is that we need to work on how we think, and the change, the deep change that can generate new possibilities for us happens there in the way we think about things. And if we are able to change that, probably we'll be able to generate different results than those we've been changing now. And I say this, with a lot of respect, because I've been, involved in space changes spaces for 4 decades almost now, 3 decades, that I'm not that old, for 3 decades, let's say, since the 90s. And it's, for me, it's been a big source of perplexity and in a way curiosity. Why I see so many people putting energy on, you know, trying to produce change. But if I look now, 2023, 30 years later than when my journey started, we are in many ways in a worse place now than we were back in the 90s, in many indicators of health and well-being of humans and ecological systems. So there's something we're not doing right. So this is an invitation to reflect on the power of thinking, and we're going to do. I want to offer you a framework that helps to think about this, which is developed by a guy in the 20th century called Thomas Kuhn. This particular configuration was developed by Carl Sanford, with whom I've been learning about working with living systems in organizations. And I think if you start from the lower level, it's quite familiar to all of us growing up in the cultures we grow up, that there's a way in which many organizations and many people are working in this mode of thinking where you're just extracting value from anywhere you can. Extract value from people, from natural resources, from social systems. So how can I benefit from this situation? How can I take value from it? You know, and if the person I hire doesn't give the value, I'll change her for someone else. And we've seen the effects this has generated and the limits, this kind of bad way of looking at systems and our role in it has. So many people start to move one ladder up and think like, we need to stop this extraction. We need to arrest disorder. We need to limit the damage we are producing. And a lot of the sustainability efforts have been moving in that sphere a bit on. But you can also see that in activist spaces, right? You have to go and stop that mining efforts there, or to prevent that forest from being thrown down. So there's a lot of energy in trying to arrest disorder or do no harm, which is better, but it has also some limits in the effects it can generate. So many of us also been trying to do good. And there's a lot of things in the do good sphere. But one of the things, my experience working in, for instance, in East Timor, with all the cooperation and support coming from the Western world there, is that actually we often do this with no consideration for the people or the places we are trying to do good for. So, and that's a big limitation, because we are really not, is much better than the other ways of thinking, but it's still quite limited in what it can generate. For instance, we might generate a lot of dependencies and not really autonomy and self-determination in people, because we make them dependent on our inputs, on our energy that we bring in. And that's the same for, you know, cooperation, but can also be in the sphere of training, of consultancy, all these different services that people offer to organizations, to communities, to people. So what we are trying to do here in the session today, and a bit, is pointing out that actually the best approach is really a systemic, aligned with the way living systems work, which in a way is working on evolving the capacity of self-determination of people through what is unique in them, through what is unique in the people, in the places we inhabit, so that these living entities can be expressing their true value and real value to the world they are part of. So we're going to experiment a bit on what this means in practice. What are some of the capabilities we need to develop? So before we do that, one of the things we've noticed with the exercise is the importance of self-observation. This is the starting point, is what Anaï was pointing out. If we don't self-observe, we might, in many cases, be doing things from an automatic point of view and not really questioning our assumptions, questioning our way of thinking, and therefore just reproducing patterns and ways of thinking and doing that are not serving the changes we want to do. So again, this is part of accept nothing without testing, and reject nothing without also testing it, and holding in mind your own development. You came to the session because you want to continue to develop yourself. You also came because you are of service to a larger thing than yourselves, which is the transition movement, is our communities. So thinking about what you want to exploring this session together with the rest of us, create a name for yourself for the rest of the session about the state of being you want to bring forward that is of service to what you want to your own development and to the development of your colleagues here in the group. And just think about what kind of state you want to bring in and create a name that can serve as a self-remembering instrument, that throughout the session, if you feel yourself collapsing to old ways, you can revisit this name just to remind yourself and write it down on your book very briefly before we move forward. And while we do this, I'm going to offer us, we're going to enter into full speed now for the second part. So I just want to invite us for a 3 minutes break, just bio break, just to go toilet, fetch some water, something to help you be present and fully in the session for the next hour we'll be together. Okay, so just 3 minutes. Let's be back at 3:58. Well, at the 58, 2 minutes before the time. Okay, we can stop. All right, so let's move. We're going to do an experiment, an experience, a second experience. And so we've just worked with, we need change happens upstream. So we need to look at the way we think. So that requires us to develop the capacity to self-observe. And then there's this other faculty that I kind of pointed towards when I invite you to develop a name for yourselves for the session, which is self-remembering. It's this capacity we have to remember states of being we had in previous situations and bring them in the moment where we need them. So if I want to come to the session today and, you know, be in an open place among peers, being humble that I'm also in this journey with you developing, then I work with my being and remember moments in the past I was like that, and I invoke those memories to bring myself fully the way I want to this session, the way I want it to be of service. So that's another great capability, self-remembering, to be able to really work on ourselves the best way possible. So now we're going to work on another one, which is that we often look at the world, even if we want to change, we often look at it still as made of parts. And we work with parts, and often with that leads is kind of collapsing into fragmented ways of thinking. Just think like how health works with human beings, right? The health system, you work on different systems of the body separate from each other. And often one treatment to one makes bad on another thing because we really don't look at the whole the whole of the human body as a whole. So we need to be able to shift our thinking that we are used to. We were schooled to think in that way towards how to work with living wholes. And that's a challenge because that requires a specific capability we all have and we all use, which is called image, which is a bit different from imagination. And we're going to do an exercise to experiment on that. So first part, I want to invite you to think about swimming, okay? And when you think about swimming, if you were going to describe swimming to another person who doesn't have a clue about what swimming is about, what would you say? What are all the things you know about swimming? And just for a minute, think about that for yourself. And you might want to take some notes on your notebook or on a paper about what is it, how you describe swimming. Well, what would you say? So as you do that, be aware of your thinking process, right? We keep practicing self-observation. So what was the nature of the mental activity you were engaged in? How would you describe it? Like, what are you describing? Like, was it like having thoughts about swimming? Or was it listing what you were doing when you swim, like you breathe, you move your arms, you are on the kind of on the top of the water, which is a liquid body, and or was it about the aim of swimming, that actually it's about, you know, floating and not sinking on the water? Or what was your thinking behind it? And make a note for yourself on what was the way you were thinking about it, and what were the effects it had on you, on your being. So when I also think here about thinking, I'm thinking about the body mind. So it's not thinking with the mind, the rational thinking is like thinking with the whole of yourselves, right? Body and mind both together. What effects thinking in the way you thought about swimming generated in you? What kind of effects? Was it like enthusiasm? Was it just, you know, not, yeah, what kind of felt sense you had of thinking in that way about swimming? And just take some notes. And I'm going to invite us now to try a different way to do this exercise. Okay, so can you close your eyes and swim? Feel yourself really swimming and get a sense of, you know, of the whole experience, as much alive as you can in you. Bring yourself into it. And yeah, just take some notes. How was this mental activity different from what you did before? And in what way did it generate different effects in you from the effects the previous way generated? And that, just take some notes very briefly for a minute or so. And then we're going to talk about it briefly. So yeah, I would love to hear a couple of voices. Well, how was the experience? In what way? I'm not like, I'm more curious and would like to focus on what was different in the effects it had on you doing the first and then the second one. What changed? Anyone?
Well, I don't mind going ahead. So I think the instructions were just slightly different, so it just refocused. The first one for me was about, you know, swimming is whatever you do not to drown in deep water, and that's what I would consider swimming. And then the second one, you know, was a bit different. It was more about how the water feels on the skin and things like that. So
So what effect those different ways of thinking about swimming had on you, Philip? Can you kind of get a sense of how you experienced that in your body, in the way, in your state of being from one to the other? Did you felt some difference, some change?
well, yeah, I mean, with the first one, it's just, you know, that's what you would tell someone, you know, what you would externalize. You would say like, okay, well, this if you can swim in whatever form that prevents you from drowning. So it's very utilitarian, kind of like this is the practical use of it. And in the second one, when I thought, like, I felt a bit more and thought a bit more about how does swimming feel for me, yeah, it's much more embodied, calming experience rather than trying to look for, you know, what's the purpose of this and what's its function. So much more just like being in the moment of imagining yourself in the water.
Okay, let's hear others. Like, what else did you experience in terms of shifts from one mode to the other in your being? Yeah, Michael.
So in terms of like, I mean, I'll admit I've been reading a book about systems thinking at the moment. So just to put that, so I don't see it. But so the thing I was thinking about when you were thinking about swimming is thinking about the relationship between the body, the water, and everything, and how that process is playing out. So that was what I was thinking about, because I've been like reading about thinking about relationships rather than things as a thinking process. So I was thinking like,
what did that generated in you, Michael? Like what affected that?
Well, it was more like, yeah, thinking about the thing as a whole. What does it mean? I was thinking about, oh, there's the swimming pool, there's people around, there's the water, there's me within it, all this sort of stuff. And then the second one, where more like thinking about when I think, you know, shut my eyes and think about what it's like swimming. That's a much more experiential type of you know, process. So, you know, it's more like imagining being in the process rather than analyzing it.
And what did that brought to you? Did it brought anything further than the one before?
I suppose you get a more somatic experience, like, you know, more body, more, depends if you're thinking about swimming as a calming process in your head, gives you one experience in the body, but then you can also be thinking like, you know, oh God, if I'm in a pool and there's loads of people in the way and I'm trying to swim, that gives a slightly different feeling in the body. Yeah. Thanks,
Michael. Anyone else had a kind of, yeah, Paul, please, Paulie.
Hi. For me, it was like already a feeling for the first exercise. I really like, as I thought about it, how to explain it, it was like a feeling of my whole body working to move forward and to float. But when I did the exercise by closing my eyes, I went deeper in the feeling, and then I realized that it was like really, this feeling was really constructed by many memories, because memories will start to come up around these feelings.
So what I'm hearing from you, in a way, I think both Philip and Michael intuit to it, but not like really explicitly, was this sense of there's an expansion with the second way of exploring swimming. It kind of, you touch with more things of yourself than just a certain part of yourself. And perhaps also, my question is perhaps also to the phenomenon of swimming itself. It kind of opens up more things than the first one. I heard, for instance, people talking the first one a lot about, you know, Mike Philip talked about the function aspects of it. So I have to move to not sink, and Michael was really on the relationship aspect of it, of the body and the water. But what you were kind of bringing, Paul, is this it's much more than that. There's much more in that experience than just that. Anyone else do you want to add something more, Paul? No? Someone else want to add something? Yeah, Don.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed was that when I was thinking about swimming, I was thinking about my relationship to the water as separate entities. And when I was imagining myself swimming, it was like me and the water were one. It wasn't like a mechanical relationship of how to move my arms and my legs. It was kind of about like dancing with the water. Yeah.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I didn't pay anything to Don, but this was in a way what you were pointing out was really what I kind of wanted to generate a bit. It's a whole different way of relating with the phenomena that we are trying to understand if we kind of explain it in an analytical way, which is the way we are mostly used to, although I can already see here in the group that many of us already have, you know, embodied in ours this kind of immediate getting in touch with relationships with a much more dynamic, but it's still, if we're not doing the way Don was explaining of like seeing ourselves as part of something that is alive and moving as a whole, and swimming is a whole experience that involves, you know, body, water, body, the sky, the winds, the currents, the fishes beneath. So there's so many things that come together for that experience to manifest. So to be able to work with life in that way requires this capacity to image that we have, which is a capacity to bring ourselves fully into a situation in our minds and in our bodies in a way that we can be inside of it and not just looking at it from outside, like if we were, you know, an observer dissecting the whole reality around, or the whole living entity. Either it's a person, an organization, or a community, or a place. So this capacity to image is really important so that we keep, you know, in relationship with the living world and not have that sense of separation that in a way Don was pointing towards. So let's hope we're going to keep practicing. So we're practicing two things as we move forward. Self-observing, so we keep watching ourselves and how we are thinking about things. And now we are also using imaging so that we are able to bring ourselves fully into the living organisms, living entities we are working with, that we are part of them and not something separate. So let's see how that works. So all right, so next exercise, experience 3. We're going to start to move from looking at problems to looking at something different. So the first thing is think about the house you live in currently. And kind of note for yourself in your paper, in your notebook, for a minute or so, what current problems you see in it that you'd like to change. And kind of list from anything from 3 to 5 problems that you see you'd like to change in your house. If you have no big problems, fine, also great, congratulations. You can think also about some things you can improve that you'd like to, I know this is okay, but could be a bit better. Let's that can also be if you don't find any problems. And pay attention to what effects thinking about the problems of your house generate in you, what kind of effect it has in you, in your being, as you are doing that. Okay, now I'm gonna shift gears and bring something else that maybe is going to change a bit your thinking about your house. Think about this house and everybody who lives there, not just you. So bring everybody alive in it and bring yourself into your house as a living whole. So kind of bring, you know, yourself into what is the daily dynamics, how is the interactions, what's going on in the house as people live there and are doing their stuff. And this time, as you do that, as you bring, so you're imaging your house alive with people doing things and interacting with each other. And as you do that, bring the meaning of home. Home. And when you bring the meaning of home into it, what changes in terms of what do you see that could be the potential for the house to evolve as a home in a way that feel much more like a home for you and others you live in, and actually could generate further well-being and nurture the lives of those who are part of that whole. So just for a moment, try to kind of connect with that. Holding a living image of yourself and those living in the house, in the home, together, doing the things you usually do. So this is, again, just to experiment very briefly. This would deserve much more time to explore, but let's just briefly get a kind of share a bit. What effects did having the concept, the idea, the meaning of home had in your thinking and in your being about what you wanted to work on in the place you live? Did anything changed? What changed? Maybe nothing changed. I mean, it's also fine. There's no right or wrong answers here. Lisa.
Well, it changed quite a bit actually, because the first part was I was focusing on the structural aspects of the house, what needs to be changed. I don't know, the roof, maybe I don't know, the insulation, and then when the home entered into the picture, then it was completely different priority to make the space like a proper either family space, like with maybe change the windows to have better view to nature, to I don't know, to think about the personal spaces, how we inhabit them. So it was a bit different dimension.
And did you experience any kind of different effects from the first one where you're looking at the physical aspects of the structural aspects of the house to the second one where you're seeing more like what changes would enable in the family? What effects that had on your being?
Completely different approach. The first one's more logical, you know, the head space. I was more thinking about, okay, what are the things that I can change in the house? And the second one was, you know, emotional, like more connected to also, I mean, to the people living in the house, or it was more involved in the second one.
Anyone else want to share your kind of experience? What changed for you? All right, so I'm going to be moving. There's a lot to talk, but Anaïs, sorry, I didn't saw you, please. But you're I think you are in the channel of Spanish. You need to kind of get out of the interpretation channel. You should, if you click on interpretation, you should move to English, and we should be able to hear you. Can't hear you yet. Yeah, but click on the interpretation and change the channel, or just put interpretation off, original audio, or I'm not sure if because you entered, I'm not sure if you are able to do that. So another way can be, Lisa, if you share with her the normal Zoom link, she can come back to the room. Sorry about that, Anahi. We'll wait to hear from you. So who else want to share? Otherwise, I'm going to be moving. Okay, I think you could try now, Anahi.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
It was very nice to, at the end, to think about all those things you say, because my house is a very little house. And when you say that if I have the opportunity to change something, to do a home where more people can come, it was great, because I can have too much people as a guest right here in my house. I have another house for guests. So it was a good experience to know how I can manage to have more people here in my own house and not in the other house for the guests. And that was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Anahi. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that often we put our focus on, so one thing is working with wholes, as we have seen with the swimming exercise. So how we work with a person as a whole, with our colleagues, with ourselves as a whole, with the places we inhabit as living wholes. And I'm recalling one thing that was common for all of us, for most of us to care for, which is integrity. So we're talking about working with integrity, because living wholes have a certain integrity that is lost when we kind of break them down in parts. But we're giving a step further, which is often we focus our work and our attention on problems, and problems never end, because this is looking backwards, is looking at what we already have that it's coming from the past. And there's always more and more problems. So in a way, what I feel when I'm working on problems in my life is like a firefighter in Portugal trying to stop fires that are coming up everywhere and they never stop. So there's a question around that. And what I'm trying to kind of bring forward is actually, when we work in the material world, there's aspects that are invisible that to us that often shape the way we do things and others, and the way things gain shape in material world. And adding the idea of adding meaning to something that is a structure, that is a house, adding meaning of home and what it makes us feel good in a place, what serves a family or interactions of people in a way that is nurturing, really elevates what we can see as potential for improving our lives and for working on the material in a way that generate new possibilities for us. So this is a big shift from focus on problems to focus on potential, which is the gap between what something is and what something could be if it really manifested fully, realized fully its purpose. So the purpose of a house, we can be looking at it very functionally. 4 walls, a ceiling, so we get protected from the outside intemperies of, you know, climate, wind, rain, all this stuff. But a house is much more than that if we bring in the home idea. And then what that generates in us in terms of what we are pursuing is totally different. So that's something to pay attention for, in the sense of what we are working on and what we are inviting people to work on. Is it solving problems? Because they will never end. So, and another thing that didn't came from the conversation, but often comes, is when I list problems, I get tired. I mean, I get excited also because I like to solve problems, but it's draining. It puts energy down. When I'm holding potential and I think, actually, this situation can be so much better, and maybe I find a way to serve it, I feel excitement, I feel energy of trying to do that. So that's something also to be paying attention to. Okay, let's continue. I want to now kind of do a bit of moving forward and start to apply this to our transition initiatives. So let's kind of leave our house and think about the place where, if you are involved in a transition initiative, think about the place where your transition initiative happens. If you are not involved locally in the place you live with the transition initiative, just bring to life, bring yourself into the place you live, but beyond your house. So the neighborhood or the village, and try to spend a little bit of time bringing it to life in you, and see like beyond what is like the appearances, the behavior, what are the patterns that organize the place, that place a way of being in the world, and kind of what makes it unique. Just by, you know, bringing yourself into walking around the neighborhood, seeing people doing what they are doing, getting a sense of the qualities of the atmosphere, of the interactions. What makes it truly unique? Is there something that you feel like this makes this neighborhood and no other place around? This makes it really different. And when you are doing that, think about what could if manifested, could make your place more fully express its potential, you know, to generate more vitality, viability among the people who live there. Just for a couple of minutes, try to do this exercise using image and bringing yourself into the place you inhabit, and see what that generates. Right. Try not to do it in an analytic way. Try to do it really with this sense of felt experience embodied. Really, if closing your eyes help you, please do that. It's really important that you practice the imaging, bringing yourself into the place. So we're trying to really change here something, which is, instead of downloading ideas on a territory, we're trying to look at the territory as a living organism. So we need to see it doing its thing. Otherwise, we don't really catching its unique aspects, its unique characteristics. And through doing that, we're trying to kind of capture its essence, because each place has its own essence, just like people, right? That's its own kind of unique way of processing energies, relationships, people, that is expressed in the way it then, you know, creates patterns of engagement, interaction, etc. And this is really important because each place, like each person, is quite unique. And doing that work really invites us to meet places where they are and not where we would like them to be, or just treating places as a indiscriminated territory for downloading our fantasies, our aspirations, without the care for its history. What is it about, from a long history of processing of different energies, right? Geological, biological, human presence, plus the relationship, the unique relationship of humans with place, which is something really interesting. When we ask people what they care about place, everybody cares about the place they live in different ways. But when you ask people what is it that they want from the place, everybody has their own unique ideas. So looking at the place is also a way to reconcile that. Instead of what is it that you want, is what is it that this place is about? What is it that you want to nurture from what is it about, and not from what you would like it to be? So this is a big change. And I want to invite us to do a different way, because what we usually do is we design a project, we download it in the territory, hopefully to generate some effects. I want to invite us to do the opposite, to understand that each living whole is nested. So each one of us is nested in a family, the family is nested in a community, the community is nested in a country or a region. So a forest is nested in a larger bioregion. So nature really works with nested wholes. So let's look at nestedness of transition initiatives, or the places we live, coming from the greater whole to the most proximate. So let's start with, you were thinking about your initiative or the place you live, and you're trying to look at the proximate whole. So with what is this territory I'm in relation with? And it could be the neighborhood, could be the village. But instead of starting there, I want you to hold in your mind the greater whole that neighborhood it's part of. So it could be that it's the city, it could be that you are just considering the proximate whole as the whole city, and you are thinking about the greater whole as the region. It could be a watershed or a valley or a coastal area. Just kind of bring in mind that larger region your place is part of, and what it's unique about it, and what is it that it's tending towards in terms of its evolution path. And just for a couple of minutes, hold that in mind, and if you want to take some notes on what you are seeing as the kind of potential further evolution of the greater whole that your place is part of. And there's no right answer. We're working on hypotheses. So just find an hypothesis for that greater whole that you can work with. You know, if it's too big, also it might be too hard to grasp. So yeah, just work with something that feels like a living whole and not a part or a. So for instance, you will see often administrative territories from the government, they don't match these natural entities, because most of the times they're just downloading a sense of division of the territory that doesn't respect the natural boundaries it's there. So try to work not with the administrative things, but more with your sense, your felt sense of a living entity this greater whole could be. So when you're holding like the greater whole and the potential evolution of it, and now think like, what is the unique from what you were doing before, from thinking about what is unique in your neighborhood or in your place. In what ways do you see that if your place would move forward to improve the value it brings to that greater whole it's part of? Can you see a way in which it could improve its relationship and its value to this greater whole, your neighborhood, if it would evolve in a certain way? Kind of explore that a little bit, that relationship between your place and the greater whole it's part of. What is like the unique contributions your place could be giving to that greater whole? And now finally, this is just, again, this is something just to test, and you can work with more time later on, but does that in any way generate some insights on what your transition initiative should be doing in service of, you know, helping the proximate whole, your neighborhood, the place your transition initiative is working with, to improve the value it generates to the greater whole it's part of? Does it generate new insights or kind of changes in what you are seeing as the way to work and the possible evolution of your transition initiative? Again, if you don't have a transition initiative, think about your own role in your neighborhood or the things you are doing there. If there's something you think you could do more or contribute to, and if that generates some insights for you. So yeah, we're kind of coming to an end, and before we kind of reflect on the whole experience, just on this part, I'm curious, did thinking about the place and what makes it unique, and then kind of extending your thinking to this greater whole your place is part of, and then thinking about the relationship between those two, did it generate in you any kind of insights, or expanded or kind of shifted in ways of thinking about what the initiative, the transition initiative should be working on, or yourself, what you should be working on? So I'm curious, would be great to have a short conversation about that.
And he has her hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak.
Yes, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
I was where I live. We have an initiative for Tepoztlán, but what you say about the whole system, I remember that Tepoztlán is part of a bioregional, a very special bioregional place called Corredor Biológico del Chichinautzin. And that took me also to remind that after pandemia, we were having a lot of conversations with people that come from the same place for different bioregions in Mexico. And we were thinking that the best thing that can happen to Mexico is to create these bioregional gatherings and launch training in one specific place, like a city or the main place where we gather the different people that is interesting, and start making these bioregional initiatives. And then in this initiative, they will split in different groups. But for now, I think we are trying to move to that place because the people is asking for that.
Okay, thank you, Anahi. So, but from what I hear from you, this was already in place. It did doing this exercise this way didn't generate new insights for you on what is it that you should be doing there.
No, it was like for me it was important because it was a reminder, because we haven't talked about that since I think six or 1 year ago. And I think it's important to remember that, because we have to move again to that. And the exercise made me think about the importance of that with the people that are asking from Mexico in transition.
Gracias. So, any other thoughts? Any other?
Yeah, can I say something? Sorry, this is Tracy. I'm sorry I don't have a camera. I know that's kind of unpleasant. I found it very like a kind of a feeling of internal conflict going through this exercise, because I really love to be there in that area where we're thinking about the possibilities and the potential, and becoming very almost visual about it, about where we are, where we can go, what we've the kind of embodiment of the type of community that I work with and the community that I'm part of. So this is a space where I really enjoy to be, and at the same time I feel a conflict, because I imagine that most of the people I work with would, in a sense, almost reject that type of thinking, because they'll be much more based and looking to solve very particular type of problems. So I suppose what I'm thinking of here is like, is there a level of anxiety that you can't get through? Can we only think in this kind of like very expansive way when we have a feeling of groundedness and calmness? Because what we're experiencing, because of so many, the first diagram you showed of the different kind of crises that we're aware of and the different ones we've experienced recently, And being a country that's got, where we're a couple of 100 miles away, bombed every day. Is there a type of anxiety which really says that it's very difficult to go to that place where you can find your potential?
Thank you so much, Tracy. That's a great question, and one I think we need to explore more. Definitely those of us who work with trauma and different situations know that if your nervous system is not stabilized, it's really hard to get in touch with that expansive space you were mentioning. So there's definitely something there about working with sensitivities, or work in a sensible way as we try to, because what we've been trying to do here, and I guess it's something I just want to name, it was already mentioned, is we're trying to be more aware of the automatic mode we are often operating from. And when I say we, I say us as collective, as a society. So getting away from that automatism requires moving towards a more sensitive space, right? To understand that we are different people, different places, coming from different places. So besides self-observing, one of the things we are pointing to is that we need to do external we call it external considering. You can give other names, but it's like practice. Some of the things we call that is empathy, compassion. So how we are able to put ourselves in other people's shoes, or I would say it in a different way, how we are able to consider others and things that are outside of us in their own terms and not from our own lenses, So that there's something that's required. But then I want to also bring something else, is that we often create spaces where we debate opinions, and not what is here is starting from a place of care. Everybody cares for the place they live in one way or the other. And we often don't start from that place, from acknowledging that we care for similar things. And there's a kind of a convergent space in looking at the territories we are part of. Now, changing, what you're talking about, also another thing that is often, when we look at potential is, and what I'm working on is, often we see potential here and the persons we are working on might see potential here. So how we help bridge that gap, because my experience is trying to tell them, look here, we can be here, doesn't solve anything, because they will see here. So there's this huge gap of what we see as possibilities, as potential ahead of us, and what others see, because they refuse to see it in a different way. So this requires us to change the way we operate, because we often operate in the telling mode. As long as I keep telling people, one day we'll understand. And that doesn't generate the kind of changes we want to do. I'm exploring other ways, and we can talk about it a bit later on about this. Rakesh, please.
Yeah, I'm struggling to work out how to really express this properly, but what I'm kind of getting from this exercise is, okay, so first of all, about me, I'm on one side as a computer consultant, for 20 odd years, very, very sharp, very ability to understand complexity, simplifying it, delivering experience, and doing stuff, achieving stuff. So that's one side of me. But then getting more into the kind of community thing, it's less about doing stuff, but it's about doing things together. But it's the why that is more important, and it's the experience of doing it together as opposed to just the end result. It's not about getting to the end, but it's about all the amazing things that happen along the way that get you there. And so thinking about a lot of what I do nowadays, it really is about first of all, trying to get people to attach themselves to the why. What is it they want to transform? What experiences do they want? And then how is it that we go? And that then leads to the how we are going to do something and what we are going to do.
Yeah.
So it's more about the experience of everybody, and achieving things together, even if it may not be as perfect as the way you would have done it on your own, because you know exactly how to do it, but just doing something together and really weaving something collaborative that really gives people, transformation. There's a lot.
I love that, Rakesh. Can you tell me very briefly what kind of going through that journey collectively in a collaborative space with other people, what does that require from you? What kind of how you need to engage in a way that kind of nurtures that?
So first of all is having a kind of idea of what you want to do and achieve, but being really, really flexible, being able to, first of all, set up the space so that others can express themselves in a way that is not led, so to speak, that is maybe facilitated, but not, we're all going to do this, aren't we? It's going to be great, isn't it? But it's more, so facilitated, but not led, if you see what I mean. But then hearing other people and hearing what's behind what they're trying to say, so that we can then collectively find a way to adjust to each other, to each other's needs, and understand what is it that I can do that helps bring about richness in you, that really makes your heart sing as well, as also meets my needs. So it's that flexibility, it's that ability to hear, the ability to listen, and I'd say real flexibility, I guess, is the key thing.
Thank you. You're pointing out to something that is like, I think it raises a lot of questions, like what makes people come together and work on something together, and what enables that to be sustained over time, which is, I think, the biggest questions we have in terms of transition initiatives, like how to sustain a collective effort over time and keep renewing it in terms of energies and stuff. So one of the reasons why I ask you what do you need to bring is because often the change work we need to be doing requires actually working on something very consciously, which is a sort of, it's a kind of difficult language to bring in, but it's among us, I think I can use them comfortably, which is kind of working on energy field. You're working on creating an atmosphere, a sense of being together that is enabling and at the same time generates the collective will to move towards a certain direction together. And that's something we are not usually working on. We are working on techniques, procedures, different stuff. So I think that you're pointing out to a certain thing. And at the same time, you said something that I want to kind of say that for me, it's often puts us in a problem or in a difficult situation, which is asking people what they want. Because we all want different things, and one things creates separation more than often. While if you ask, like when I started the session today, I asked, what do you care about in this situation? And that's, it looks like the same question, but it's actually quite different in nature, because it's inviting people to connect to what is really matters to you, that makes you move. But it's not just, it's connected to you, but it's not about you in a way. You see, because that's an assumption here that humans have more energy and are sourced by doing something larger than themselves. Usually, when we are just looking at ourselves, we are diminished in our human beingness, because we are equipped to really, tend to larger wholes, to families, to communities, to different things, because in deep down, people get a sense that that's part of that's an essential part of who we are. So yeah, please, Rakesh, and then let's hear others also. And we are already on a reflection mode about how this session, in a way, what kind of insights it's bringing in terms of the movement and our work within the transition initiative, right? So just want to shift that gear towards that reflection as we close. So Rakesh and then Michael, please, Rakesh, just briefly.
Yeah, so this is what I mean by facilitated as opposed to led. Because, yeah, I agree. If you ask two people and they have two completely diametrically opposed solutions or things that they want to do that are not compatible with each other, then, yeah, one or the other will be disappointed. So it's about this. I work a lot with sociocracy. So it's about, first of all, co-creating a common vision, and then processes and things that we do together to collaboratively move together to achieve those. And yeah, and never have two solutions on the table at the same time ever, because as I say, someone will always be disappointed, and you won't take everyone together.
Yeah, Michael, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of overseeing the Transition Together project, which is like supporting the movement in the UK. And one of the things I think about a lot is like how you create the environment for stuff to emerge. So rather than trying to control or direct stuff, it's more about like, how do you create that space when we're thinking about training or events or how we deliver stuff. A lot of the time we're thinking about that is like how you're creating that space for stuff to emerge from, rather than going like, you should be doing this or you should be doing that, and then everything is in process and movement all the time. So you're never, I always think a lot of it now, I think a lot more about like, it's almost like you're surfing, you're on a wave and you're trying to stay on the wave and enable it to, you're always constantly having to rebalance and rethink and think about the environment around you and responding to what's going on. So all of those things, rather than like a control mindset, it's more about a sort of relating and sort of rolling with the punches in a way, or trying to navigate through like choppy waters. But how you do that in the best way to keep the things going and to enable the ship to get stronger in a way. And
Thanks,
you're
Michael.
always going to be hit by surprise things, the occasional storm, or the boat stops working, or all those sorts of things.
Much for that. Yeah, just so really move from control and management to really stewarding, and which was some midwifing, some of the kind of images I was having of hearing you. But just kind of run us through what we've been exploring and close the session with just a final question for you. So, we've checked how important it is to go upstream in changing systems and look at how we think about things. Einstein used to say, if I have 1 hour to solve a problem, I'll spend 55 minutes thinking about how to tackle it and how to approach it, and then 5 minutes to really find a solution. So that's an interesting take on this. What were we trying to shift our thinking from, fragmented, working with a reductionist way of looking at reality, to working with living wholes? Moving from working with generic types, categories of people, of different things, to working with essence. Each person, each living entity has its unique essence. How we find that, how we try to understand it, to sense it, is really important in our places, in the people we work with. Moving from problems to work with potential, for stop looking backwards and really looking forward. And moving from working linearly to work with nested holes, and at least 3 levels, right? From, our project, our initiative is embedded in a living whole, which is embedded in a greater living whole, how we look at those relations so that we work with our initiatives in the way that enhances and evolves the contribution of the proximate whole to the larger whole. So, sourcing our creativity from our places and contexts instead of importing them from other, like best practices or things like that, like pret-a-porter, like prescribed formulas. Make fundamental shifts in how we think and experience more wholeness in our being, doing, and will, and also in the way we are part of greater wholes and not looking at them from outside. So it requires us to be able to image living wholes alive in a vivid way and see these nested levels, at least 3. One of the things we didn't work out here is to really work with dynamic frameworks and not models, because models are just making us see reality in a flat way, while frameworks, if they are dynamic, they just are a kind of tool to help us organize complexity and hold larger levels of complexity in our thinking. And practice. So experiment some of these things we've tried out today with colleagues. Ideally, we should all be working on 3 levels, at least, working our own development ongoingly. Doing this kind of work in this way is really hard. So working with colleagues and contributing for each other's development is crucial. So keep developing our capacity in teams to do our work. And I think this is something's part of the DNA of transition, so that we then can transform the larger systems we are working on, our territories and all the systems in place within which we relate with each other and with nature. And yeah, so just briefly look at your personal aim for the session, and how did it went for you? Were you able to sustain your being? Did you find yourselves collapsing? And was it useful to have a personal aim to help you, conduct yourself better through the session, to achieve what you wanted to achieve and help others achieve what they wanted? And as you think about this, grab your phone and let's do one final Mentimeter, just with the question of what insights, what changed in you from the session, just to get a sense if anything changed. It can also be that nothing changed. So very briefly, I'm going to, can I take this slide off? Yeah, did you already put the QR code? Fantastic. So let me.
Can you put the code in the chat, please?
The code, the numbers.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so just one more minute and we'll close. So let's see the results. So opened up some new areas to think about, learned how to use imaging in a new way, reframing some ideas, some concepts, some ways of thinking. Oh, some problem with the internet. Okay, perspective on my neighborhood and my city. Okay, I'm going to send you out the results. So please, if you haven't done so, fill it in and I'll send to everybody afterwards. From my side, thank you so much for these 2 hours. I hope it was beneficial to you, and this is just scratching the surface. But anyway, it was great to be here. Leave any message if you want. Reach out to me if you want to know a bit more about this work. Thanks, Don, for your support. Lisa.
Thank you.
Good luck. May the force be with you.
So yeah, this was fantastic, Nuno. Thank you very much. Please feel free to post thank yous to Nuno in the chat. We will be having other training conversations in the coming months, and I believe we already have one scheduled coming up. I'm wondering if Lisa or Philip, you would like to say a word about that.
Oh, we will send more information. Just heads up that in March we'll have a session with Philip on resources, transition resources. But we'll continue the conversation in HubHub.
Great, and we'll be posting both the recording of this and the invitation to HubHub, the transition platform. So if you aren't on there yet, we'll make sure to send you an invitation and get connected there. lots of great things coming up, and we all need each other in this work. So let's stay in touch. Thank you all very much for coming. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Feel free to unmute and say goodbye.
Bye. Au revoir.
Bye. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Nuno. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Gracias,
Bye-bye.
Nuno.
Gracias.